So let's take a look at the ash tree. So this is the main ash tree, the only one I've ever had until last year I got a cutting from it. I didn't even know you could take cuttings from it. You see that big wound right there? That's what this is. That's where it came from. It had kind of a strange year. It grew, as you can see. Look at this, look at the bark down there. I don't know what happened or how that happened or what, but weird. See a weed right there too, let's get rid of that. And then a cutting of the cutting. I kid you not. So this is 3rd generation cutting here. It's not exactly pretty, but I just thought, hey, you know, cutting of a cutting, cool. So much for that. Let's look at this one. I can tell you that in my experience with ash trees, or at least with this ash tree, since it's the only one I've had, they sort of like burst out of growth, you know, with growth. They're one of the later ones to leaf out. But then when they do leaf out, you know, they grow like almost out of control and you're like, oh my gosh. And then I prune it back, and from that point on, it just doesn't really grow. That's happened to me every single year since I've had this tree. Maybe a couple of rare exceptions, I've pruned it twice in the same year, but otherwise, I prune it once and that's it. It just stays that way for the rest of the year. Amur maples are similar, for me at least. And I've heard different things, but that's what these do and that's what Amur maples do. I have a feeling it's something to do with my timing. I probably just need to learn more about the right time. Probably the right time and the wrong time, and I must be doing it at the wrong time. But otherwise, it's got this cool twin trunk deal going where it's kind of twisted up. Yeah, I like this guy. And it's due for repot as well. It's been 2 years now, so gonna have to repot that in the spring. All right, here's my Shantung maple. Of all the trees that I have, I've had this one the longest, and this one is my favorite. Unfortunately, it has also had a rough few years, and so you haven't got to see it in its full glory yet. But it is a really cool tree, and it's got a lot of potential. I mean, look at the root base on this. How it tapers out like that. I grew this in the ground for quite a while, on a couple occasions. The bark is super cool on it. Got this really kind of fissured look. But it's had some damage as well, and you know, it's had a rough couple of years. It's had a rough life, I should say. That's another one. I'm not trying to get a sob story out of all my trees, but it has had a rough life. It was in a pot, then I put it in the ground, then I dug it up, then it almost died, then I put it back in the ground, took off for a few years, then I dug it up, put it in a pot, and it's been in a pot ever since. But it's healthy enough, it's in recovery. I gotta figure out what to do about some of this stuff here. This is all die back at different points. I used some cut paste here to seal up some of this wound. I was afraid that moisture would get in that bark there and it would rot from within, but I heard different opinions. Some people said, hey, that's not a terrible thing. It'll give it character. And it might, or it might kill it. You just never really know. You can kind of see where the live vein is here. Some cut paste there. I gotta get different cut paste. This gives it a really ugly look. Anyway, that is my Shantung maple. Not much to say about it now other than my favorite tree and I love it. But we'll brag about it when it actually looks good. All right, I'm gonna bounce back to a tropical here for a minute. This is Scheffy, a Schefflera. One of my oldest Scheffleras, not the oldest, but I think the second oldest, if I'm not mistaken. Got a weed in there. Gotta pull it. Anyways, for the most part, this one has had a pretty decent life, and then the last couple years, it's really gotten cooler because, as you can see, it threw down all of these aerial roots. And the way that that happened was just the old plastic bag trick. Had it in the greenhouse, put a plastic bag over it, sprayed some water to keep it nice and humid in there, kept an eye on it to make sure it didn't get moldy. You know, I'd take the bag off every so often too. But that just encourages these aerial roots. And I repotted it a year or two ago, and I sort of tried to arrange these aerial roots in a way that was aesthetically pleasing. But at this point, I think it's now ready for a trim. I do recall now it had a slow start, and I was slightly concerned going into the growing season. It didn't really want to grow for some reason. Finally, I just defoliated it entirely, and boom, it just took off after that. So must have been related to that. But it's about time now for a trim. You can see some of these branches are quite long. So we'll look at that at some point in the very near future, I think. Otherwise, that's Sheffy, the Schefflera tongue twister. All right. So a boxwood and an Amur maple. How are they related, you might ask? Trick question. They're not. I just have two hands, so I carried two over this time. Let's start with the boxwood. I did a video on this about a month or two ago and really hacked this thing back. I got it on clearance at Walmart for $5, and it was one of those huge bushes when I got it. And I thought, man, this is quite the hack job I'm giving it. Not sure if it's going to like it or not. But it did. As you can see, it just exploded afterward, which I'm very happy about. I haven't trimmed it or anything since then. Just let it grow to regain its health. It's got a cool root base, and I'm gonna have to make some decisions in the spring, you know, which one of these branches to keep. I think we'll end up losing one of them. I just don't know which. Yeah. Well, I don't like how it kind of like curves up like that. Might have to do some wiring or something to get it to get some foliage right here. And here, it's a little like bald spot right there in the middle. Otherwise, I'm real happy with it. It's doing great. My other Amur maple, I'm down to just two. The one I showed a few minutes ago, and then this one. And I've got some seedlings that I started this year, but they're not worth talking about quite yet. Here's another example of one that it was doing fine. It's got cool movement. I wired it a couple of years ago, and you can still see I left the wires on just slightly too long. See where the wires bit into the bark there? But that's not here nor there at the moment. It did something weird. All my trees do weird things to me that I don't understand. The leaves didn't just get like leaf burn. Like, they look like they caught on fire or something. I mean, look at that. That's more than just leaf burn. You know, am I crazy? I don't know. I've never had a tree do this, ever. Amur maples have always been sort of sensitive. They do the same thing that ash tree did that I talked about a minute ago, where I prune it once and it just sort of stops growing and pouts for the rest of the year. The leaves get sort of papery, waxy, and nothing new grows. I gave this a slight prune, and that was basically it. It did pop out a little bit of new growth at one point, I remember, but I couldn't even tell you what the new growth is now that I'm looking at it. It was in semi-shade. It was underneath the Shantung maple, which shaded it out quite a bit during the hottest part of the day. So I have no idea. I would love to talk to an Amur maple expert out there. Anyways, worth looking at, but definitely not brag worthy at the moment. So here are two privets that I did a video on late winter, early spring this year, 2024. Got one that's kind of growing out to the left, and one's growing out to the right. And yet they still get along. They don't fight at all. they had an okay year. They grew out, and then I think they might have been in too much direct sun, because at one point they started losing a lot of their leaves. I don't know. I guess I don't fully understand these yet either. I just sort of let them grow most of the time and then trim them back. I haven't spent a ton of quality time with them, but you might get an idea here of what I'm talking about. You can see the difference in color. So some of this is old growth, some is new growth. They got a long way to go, but they're not bad. They were just cuttings from 5 or 6 years ago from a larger one that I had that I think died. And I've just liked it ever since. Cool movement. So years from now, if they make it, they'll be pretty cool. All right. So from there, oops. Okay, so from there, let's walk around a bit. Got like a lemon tree, 2 little leaf ficus, another lemon tree, whole bunch of ficus, ficus fusion cuttings, ficus fusion cuttings. So here's the apple tree. Did a video on this, I want to say beginning of summer. Somebody posted it on Facebook Marketplace. They just wanted it dug up from their yard and taken away. So I showed up, dug it up, took it away. Potted it up, put it there, and it's been there ever since. I haven't trimmed it or anything, I just let it grow. So it survived and thrived. A lot of growth there. So we'll do some trimming and air layering on that come spring. We already took a look at the Japanese maples in my last video. This is actually my oldest Schefflera. This was somebody's office plant, and they gave it to me when we were moving offices. Didn't even know what it was at the time. Did a little research, and there it is. A couple of Cascade Ficus benjaminas. Nothing too crazy there. Here's my windswept Ficus benjamina. That's on its way to being something kind of cool. Not there yet, but we'll get there. Bunch of random cuttings. This is a coral bark Japanese maple. If you don't know much about these, they're super cool because in the winter time, the bark turns this really bright red. And when everything else is gray and brown and ugly, you got this big bright red thing in the bunch. It's cool. Got a couple of Schefflera clumps up there on top. There's a pomegranate. My main pomegranate. And it actually developed fruit this year. It's the first time it's ever done that. One of the last update videos I made in summer, right when I was making the video, a hummingbird showed up like right next to me, came over and was doing something with these flowers. So I think what happened is that it pollinated it, and that's why they're fruiting this year. It's a pretty cool experience at the time too. Here's a cutting of it, more cuttings. Japanese cypress, I think. I forget what it's called. Here's the Ficus benjamina forest I made last year. Did a little trim to it this year once. Got new growth coming out again. So it's kind of doing well. This is the other topiary that I had, and this one I'm doing an air layer on. And as soon as I did it, like the very next day, this was in the middle of summer, it got really hot and it just was too much stress and it lost almost all of its leaves, and I went, oh, I killed it. But no, it lives. You see new growth popping out all over the place. So it lives. I'm gonna bring it in soon. This is what I call I've always referred to this as my work bonsai. Let's put it over here and get a better look. It's a Ficus benjamina, but I've had it for like 6 years now. It just started as just a little tiny cutting. Oops, sorry, 1 second there. There we go. Yeah, it just started as just a little cutting. I brought it to my office and just kind of let it grow, and I started to develop some cool character and doing real well now. Yeah, my work bonsai. All right, this is going to be kind of hard to see because of the trees behind it, and I don't want to move it because it's a big cement pot and it's cracked. My first cement pot I ever made, and it's cracked actually in 2 places, so I have a feeling if I even look at it wrong, it's just going to fall apart. But this is my other Siberian elm, or excuse me, my main Siberian elm forest. It did the same thing as my other 2 large Siberian elms where it leaves turn brown and weird, and there's an example right there. Yeah, so it had a rough summer as well. But it survived and it's grown out again. I can't wait till spring so I can trim this bad boy up and get it back into shape. That's the Siberian elm forest. Now this is a silver maple that I've done a couple of videos on this. About 4 or 5 years ago, I put it in this gigantic pot and I'm hedge pruning it. So I'm not doing the clip and grow. And I just wanted to kind of watch the difference and see how it goes. And pardon these little trees here. It's really hard to tell what's going on down here, but yeah, we're not going to be able to tell very much. But anyways, I just let it grow out, hedge prune it back, let it grow out, hedge prune it back. And it's very healthy. So trees definitely like that method better. Whether it's better for bonsai, you know, in the long run, who knows, but it is better for their health for sure. All right, just a few more to look at. If you've hung with me this long, thank you. I appreciate you. So here's the honeysuckle. Definitely need to repot this next year. It's been in this pot for about 4 years now. Did an air layer on there. It lived for a while, then died on the balcony. My Costco crabapple tree. Did a video on this a couple of months ago where I pruned it up. Doing well. It's got cool nabari. Not sure if I'm going to repot it next year or not. I'd like to say I am, but who knows? I got a lot of them to do. Blueberry bush, future bonsai. It did not have a good year. My other blueberry bush, future bonsai, also did not have a good year. Most of it died off, as you can see. But I had these 2 little suckers that luckily I didn't cut, and so now that's all that's left. And over here, that's the corkscrew willow. Had a weird year. Didn't do as well as I had hoped. You can kind of see a difference between the old growth here. It got sort of stunted for a while. And then new growth back here. You can really see a difference in color of the leaves there. So I'm not sure what it was that caused it. There was something that it didn't like. But then the last month or 2, it really just exploded in growth. So too little, too late for this year, but it's an encouraging sign for next year. Then for anybody who hasn't seen my my future project video that I did last week, here's a couple that I'm doing in the spring. These are New Mexican olive trees. Picked these up just recently from a local person. Pretty excited to work with those. And last but not least, my lilac bush. It's called a presidential grevy lilac. It's got this cool, big, thick root base. Flowers, these awesome purple flowers in the spring. Leaves are about to fall for now, but just recently too, it started leafing out again. I've never seen it do that before. I don't know what caused it to do that this year, but for some reason, it just decided to grow some more. I don't know if it'll even survive the winter, but you know. Anyway, I like it. Well, that's it for now. I'm sure I left some out. Couldn't tell you which ones. Everything's in disarray right now as I'm getting ready to bring the tropicals in for the fall and winter. But I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your day, everybody.